Hello, Emmanuel community. I'm John Smallwood, who with my wife Mary attend the 8 a.m. service when we had services. I thought I would share with you a little bit about my own personal spiritual journey that brought me to the Episcopal community that I'm now part of, and share with you the somewhat surprising background and journey I have that blends together today into my own understanding of God. I have spent my life, up until my first journey into an Episcopal church, as a member of the Religious Society of Friends, commonly called Quakers. I was, and still am, a member of a Quaker meeting in Northern Virginia. Quakers grew out of the English Civil War in the mid-17th century and developed some radical different styles of worship and spirituality than the Church of England or the Puritans of the time. And those characteristics have continued to this day and have actually shaped my own understanding of my own spirituality a lot. For those of you who don't know, a Quaker meeting is a group of friends. Friends is the term we call each other. They come together on a Sunday and they sit in a plain room that has no art or adornment or symbols, no music, and they sit there in a circle facing each other with no clergy. And the idea, the basic thought is that God dwells within each of us, so the altar of God is actually each other that we look at. And we sit in silence and maybe for an hour, no speaking at all. And the idea is interior introspection for that prophetic voice, that small voice of God tugging at us inside of us. If during that hour one of us, and it could be any of us, feels that voice strong enough and clear enough, that person stands and gives a message and shares with that insight. Rarely do messages exceed 5 minutes. Usually they're only a few minutes, and they are supposedly never planned in advance. This is not a homily. This is an inspirational message. Sometimes there are many messages, sometimes there are none. After the end of an hour, friends shake each other's hands and the meeting is concluded. So this structure that I have experienced for my life is very interior and very egalitarian. Anyone can be the vessel of God's voice in this meeting. Our business practices are also very egalitarian. All business is decided by the community of a whole. There is a volunteer convener who helps the process, and we take turns with that job. But essentially the group is seeking to find God's wisdom. So this kind of explains my background for all my life. About a decade ago, I walked into a Episcopal church on Christmas Eve, wanting to help celebrate Jesus' birth. I met a group of very open and friendly people in that parish who invited me to come back and stay, join their Bible sharing group, and they also had an EFM group, Education for Ministry group, and they invited me to join that, and really got me involved deeply in their parish. And I learned several things were just overwhelmingly new to me here and surprising. And I'll share this to you, especially if it may surprise you. I found Episcopal worship from my Quaker background to be incredibly sensual. Beautiful building, beautiful music, orderly processions, and beautiful vestment, clothing, colors on the altar and on the priest change in the liturgical season. The homilies given were carefully constructed and thought out. And most of all, most central of all, it was the Eucharist itself. My first experiences with the Eucharist were up in the D.C. Diocese, which allows anyone who is seeking God to come to the Eucharistic table. So I went. I was really taken by the Eucharist itself. It was a physical story. I was entering into a physical story of the Last Supper, and the wine, the sharp flavor, the sweetness, the bread, the substance, the priest handing out the elements, all gave a physical experience that I had never had in Quaker meeting, because my decades and decades of Quaker meeting were about sitting and introspection. So I stayed, and then when moved to Stanton, I came to Emmanuel Episcopal Church. So in me today, I have this two traditions, two very simple, different traditions. The Quaker austerity, the introspection, the silence, the egalitarian part of me is there. And the other part of me exists in the Episcopal Church with his sensual, careful, beautiful reenactment of the Last Supper. Somehow these apparently contrasting and almost contradicting traditions seem to work together for me and help me come to Christ in a more full way than I had been before, or if I had just been in the Episcopal Church. That is just a bit of what's going on within me and my spiritual journey. And I invite you also to share, maybe at Wednesday Words, a little bit of your spiritual journey. We learn so much from each other, how God calls us to fullness. Thank you.